Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shila Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmat Shila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmat Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmat Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmat Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Nitil Pravishta Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shikor Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashata Rashata Shmad Srila Bhakti Shri Rup Siddhanti Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Tadiya Shubha Tirobhav Titi ki jai. Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. That's a very good point, Rup Manjari. That's really funny. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine. Sorry. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya namne gauratishe namaha. Guruve gaurachandraya radhikaya tadalai Krishnaya Krishna bhaktaya tarbhaktaya namo namaha. Yam pravrajantam anupetam apeta-kritam dvaipayano viraha katara ajuhava. Aputreti tanmayataya taravo bhinedus tang sarva bhuta hridayam munimanatosmi. Narayanam namaskrityam narang chaiva narottamam. Devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Shrinvatang swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana Vedantasto hyapadrani vidhunoti suritsatam Nashta prayeshvabhadreshu nityang bhagavata sevaya Bhagavatuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki Tavaivasmi na jivami tvaya vina Iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam Bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay Kshiptashtakama dittaranga madhe Kripa mai tvam sharanam prapanna Vrinde namaste charanarvindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranams Manjari Didi and Prajumna Prabhu. Let's see, is it streaming everywhere? I just want to check because usually there's more people watching by now. It says offline everywhere. That's strange. Oh, now it says online. All right. Anyhow, let's begin. So King Citraketu's lamentation. Bhakti is very rare, even for demigods and sages. Parikshit Maharaj, he inquires about Vitrasura's exaltedness. He says, Bhakti is very rare, even for demigods and sages. A devotee is most rare, but Vitrasura was a demon. So how is it possible that he is so exalted? And then, then Shukadeva Goswami explains the story of Citraketu, who Vitrasura was in his past life. And he heard this from, who did he hear from? From Narad? Who did he hear it from? From Vyasadeva, Narad, and Devala. Oh, let's just read from here. Why not? Actually, no, it's going to take too long, and I already started late. So, Citraketu had 10 million wives, but no son. Once Angira visited Citraketu, who received him very well. Angira asked, "Is everything well? Are your citizens in your control? Your pale face reflects anxiety." Then Citraketu explains the cause of his anxiety. He said, "Yogis like you know everything. My opulences do not please me. Please help me get a son." Then merciful Angira performed a sacrifice and gave the remnants to the first queen, informing Citraketu that his son will cause both joy and sorrow. Then Angira left. Kṛtadyuti eventually gave birth to a son, and the parents' affection for the son increased. The other queens condemned themselves in envy due to Citraketu's neglect. They administered poison to the child. Realizing that the child was dead, everyone cried. Citraketu also arrived there, grief-stricken. Kṛtadyuti condemned Providence She condemned Providence as inexperienced and unintelligent for having cut the bonds of affection. Kṛtadyuti called her son, "Don't go with Yamaraj." And then she concluded that he was dead and lamented. As everyone lamented, Narad and Angira arrived. All right, so let's hear now. Chapter 15. The saints Narad and Angira instruct King Citraketu. And I just decided to read this full chapter today, even though it's 6,300 words, which might be too much for us today. So if I don't, by 8 o'clock, if I don't make it to the end, then we can just continue on from tomorrow. We can finish this chapter tomorrow, I mean. Because tomorrow I only have like 4,400 words scheduled to read. So the saints, Chapter 15. In this chapter, Angira Rishi, along with Narad, consoles Citraketu as far as possible. Angira and Narad Rishi came to relieve the king from excessive lamentation by instructing him about the spiritual significance of life. The great saints Angira and Narad explains that the relationship between father and son is not factual. It is simply a representation of the illusory energy. The relationship did not exist before, nor will it stay in the future. By the arrangement of time, that relationship exists only in the present. One should not lament for temporary relationships. The entire cosmic manifestation is temporary. Although not unreal, it is not factual. By the direction of the Supreme Personality of By the direction of the that doesn't seem to make sense, does it? Although not real, it is not factual. But I get it now, actually. It's because it's temporary. So something that's temporary isn't actually like the truth. It's not the real fact. It's, yeah. By the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything created in the material world is transient. By a temporary arrangement, a father begets a child. Our living entity becomes the child of a so-called father. This temporary arrangement is made by the Supreme Lord. Neither the father nor the son exists independently. As the king listens to the great sages, he was relieved from his false lamentation, and then he inquired about their identity. The great sages presented who they were and instructed that all sufferings are due to the bodily conception of life. When one understands his spiritual identity and surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Spiritual Person, one becomes actually happy. When one searches for happiness in matter, one must certainly lament for bodily relationships. Self-realization means spiritual realization of one's relationship with Krishna. Such realization ends one's miserable material life. Text 1. Shishuka Uvacha Uchatur Mritako Pante Patitam Mritako Panam Shoka Vibhutam Rajanam Bodhayanto Saruktibi. They're going to start plowing the field right now. Maybe I should close my windows and door. Yeah, I'm going to do that really quick. 1 second. Sorry, guys. I'm back. Still kind of loud, but better than before. Okay. So Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, while King Citraketu, overcome by lamentation, lay like a dead body at the side of the dead body of his son, the two great sages Narad and Angira instructed him about spiritual consciousness as follows. Koyam syat tava rajendra bhavanyam anushochati tvam chasya katama shrishto puredanim ataparam. O king, what relationship does the dead body for which you lament have with you? And what relationship do you have with him? You may say that you are now related as father and son, but do you think that this relationship existed before? Does it truly exist now? Will it continue in the future? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The instructions given by Narad and Angira Muni are the true spiritual instructions for the illusioned conditioned soul. This world is temporary, but because of our previous karma, we have come here and accept bodies, creating temporary relationships in terms of society, friendship, love, nationality, and community, which are all finished at death. These temporary relationships did not exist in the past, nor will they exist in the future. Therefore, at the present moment, the so-called relationships are illusions. Yata prayanti samyanti srota vegena baluka sangyujante viyujante tata kalena dehina. O king, as small particles of sand sometimes come together and are sometimes separated due to the force of the waves, the living entities who have accepted material bodies sometimes come together and are sometimes separated by the force of time. Purport. The misunderstanding of the conditioned soul is the bodily conception of life. The body is material, but within the body is the soul. This is spiritual understanding. Unfortunately, one who is in ignorance under the spell of a material illusion accepts the body to be the self. He cannot understand that the body is matter. Like small particles of sand, bodies come together and are separated by the force of time, and people falsely lament for the unification and separation. Unless one knows this, there is no question of happiness. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 2.13, this is the first instruction given by the Lord. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praktir dhiras tatra namuhyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. We are not the body. We are spiritual beings trapped in the body. Our real interest lies in understanding this simple fact. Then we can make further spiritual progress. Otherwise, if we remain in the bodily conception of life, our miserable material existence will continue forever. Political adjustments, social welfare work, medical assistance, and other programs we have manufactured for peace and happiness will never endure. We shall have to undergo the sufferings of material life one after another. Therefore, material life is said to be dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It is a reservoir of miserable conditions. Yata dhana subhai dhana bhavanti na bhavanti cha evam bhutani bhuteshu choditani shamayaya. When seeds are sown in the ground, they sometimes grow into plants and sometimes do not. Sometimes the ground is not fertile and the sowing of seeds is unproductive. Similarly, sometimes a prospective father, being impelled by the potency of the Supreme Lord, can beget a child, but sometimes conception does not take place. Therefore, one should not lament over the artificial relationship of parenthood, which is ultimately controlled by the Supreme Lord. Purport. Maharaj Citraketu was actually not destined to get a son. Therefore, although he married hundreds and thousands of wives, 10 million wives, right? All of them proved barren, and he could not beget even one child. When Angira Rishi came to see the king requested the great sage to enable him to have at least one son. Because of the blessing of Angira Rishi, a child was sent by the grace of Maya, but the child was not to live for long. Therefore, in the beginning, Angira Rishi told the king that he would beget a child who would cause jubilation and lamentation. King Citraketu was not destined to get a child by providence or the will of the Supreme. Just as sterile grain cannot produce more grain, a sterile person, by the will of the Supreme Lord, cannot beget a child. Sometimes a child is born even to an impotent father and a sterile mother, and sometimes a potent father and fertile mother are childless. Indeed, sometimes a child is born despite contraceptive methods, and therefore the parents kill the child in the womb. In the present age, killing children in the womb has been a common practice. Why? When contraceptive methods are taken, why don't they act? Why is a child sometimes produced so that the father and mother have to kill it in the womb? We must conclude that our arrangement of so-called scientific knowledge cannot determine what will take place. What is enacted actually depends on the Supreme Will. It is by the Supreme Will that we are situated in certain conditions in terms of family, community, and personality. These are all arrangements of the Supreme Lord according to our desires under the spell of Maya, illusion. In devotional life, therefore, one should not desire anything, since everything depends on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, first chapter, verse 11. Anyavilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam Anukulena Krishnano Shilanam Bhaktiruttamam. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. One should act only to develop Krishna consciousness. For everything else, one should fully depend upon the Supreme Person. We should not create plans that will ultimately make us frustrated. Vayam chatvam chaye cheme tulakalaschara janma mrityor yatha paschat pranayvam adhuna pibho. O King, both you and us, your advisors, wives, and ministers, as well as everything moving and not moving throughout the entire cosmos at this time, are in a temporary situation. Before our birth, this situation did not exist, and after death, it will exist no longer. Therefore, our situation now is temporary, although it is not false. Purport. Mayavadi philosophers say, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman, the living being, is factual, but his present bodily condition is false. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, however, the present situation is not false, but temporary. It is like a dream. A dream does not exist before one falls asleep, nor does it continue after one awakens. The period for dreaming exists only between these two, and therefore it is false in the sense that it is impermanent. Similarly, the entire material creation, including our own creation and those of others, is impermanent. We do not lament for the situation in a dream before the dream takes place or after it's over. And so during the dream or during a dreamlike situation, one should not accept it as factual and lament about it. This is real knowledge. Bhuter bhutani bhutesha srejata batihanti cha atmashishter asvantantrar anapeksho hi balavat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and Proprietor of everything, is certainly not interested in temporary cosmic manifestation. In the temporary cosmic manifestation. Nonetheless, just as a boy at the beach creates something in which he is not interested, the Lord, keeping everything under his control, causes creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He creates by engaging a father to beget a son. He maintains by engaging a government or king to see the public's welfare, and he annihilates through the agents for killing, such as snakes. The agents for creation, maintenance, and annihilation have no independent potency, but because of the spell of the illusory energy, one thinks himself the creator, maintainer, and annihilator. Purport. No one can independently create, maintain, or annihilate. Bhagavad Gita 3:27 therefore says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Prakriti, material nature, as directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, induces all living entities to create, maintain, or annihilate according to the modes of nature. But the living entity, without knowledge of the Supreme Person and his agent in the material energy, thinks that he is the doer. In fact, he is not at all the doer. As an agent of the Supreme Doer, the Supreme Lord, one should abide by the Lord's orders. The present chaotic conditions of the world are due to the ignorance of leaders who forget that they have been appointed to act by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because they have been appointed by the Lord, their duty is to consult the Lord and act accordingly. The book for consultation is Bhagavad Gita, in which the Supreme Lord gives directions. Therefore, those who are engaged in creation, maintenance, and annihilation should consult the Supreme Person who has appointed them, and should act accordingly. Then everyone will be satisfied, and there will be no disturbances. Dehino dehino rajan, dehar deho bijayate, bijad eva yata bijam, dehyarta eva shashvata. As from one seed, another seed is generated, O king. So from one body, the body of the father, through another body, the body of the mother, a third body is generated, the body of a son. As the elements of the material body are eternal, the living entity who appears through these material elements is also eternal. Purport. From Bhagavad Gita, we understand that there are two energies, namely the superior energy and inferior energy. Inferior energy consists of the 5 gross and 3 subtle material elements. The living entity, who represents the superior energy, appears in different types of bodies through these elements by the manipulation or supervision of the material energy. Actually, both the material and spiritual energies, matter and spirits, exist eternally as potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The potent entity is the Supreme Person. Since spiritual energy, the living being, who is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, desires to enjoy this material world, the Lord gives him a chance to accept different types of material bodies and enjoy or suffer in different material conditions. Factually, the spiritual energy, the living entity who desires to enjoy material things, is manipulated by the Supreme Lord. The so-called father and mother have nothing to do with the living entity. As a result of his own choice and karma, the living being takes different bodies through the agency of so-called fathers and mothers. Deha dehi vibhaghoyam aviveka krita pura jati vyakti vibhagoyam yatha vastu nikalpita. Divisions of generalization and specification, such as nationality and individuality, are the imaginations of persons who are not advanced in knowledge. Purport. Actually, there are two energies, material and spiritual. Both of them are ever existing because they are emanations from the eternal truth, the Supreme Lord. Because the individual soul, the individual living entity, has desired to act in forgetfulness of his original identity since time immemorial, he is accepting different positions in material bodies and being designated according to many divisions of nationality, community, society, species, and so on. Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Ashvasito Raja Citraketur Dvijoktibi Vimrija Panina Vaktram Adhimlanam Abhashata. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued. Thus enlightened by the instructions of Narada and Gira, King Citraketu became hopeful with knowledge. Wiping his shriveled face with his hands, the king began to speak. Shirajovacha Ko yuvam jnana sampanno mahishto cha mahiyasam avadutena veshena gudav iha samagato. King Citraketu said, "You have both come here dressed like avaduts, liberated persons, just to cover your identities. But I see that of all men, you are the most elevated in awareness. You know everything as it is. Therefore, you are the greatest of all great personalities." Charanti havana kamam brahmana bhagavat priya matrisham gramya buddhina bodhayon matalingina. Brahmins who are exalted to the position of Vaishnavas, the most dear servants of Krishna, sometimes dress like madmen. Just to benefit materialists like us, who are always attached to sense gratification, and just to dissipate our ignorance, these Vaishnavas wander on the surface of the globe according to their desire. Kumara Narada Ribur Angira Devala Sita Apantaratma Vyasa Markandeya Tagotama Vishishta Bhagavan Rama Kapila Badarayani Durvasa Yagyavalkyascha Jatukarnastataruni Romashaschavano Datta Asuri Sapatanjali Rishirveda Shiradhomyo Muni Panchashikastata Hiranyabha Kaushalya Shrutadeva Ritadvaja Ete Parecha Siddheshas Charanti Jnana Hetava. O great souls, I have heard that among the great and perfect persons wandering the surface of the earth to instruct people, I've heard that among the great and perfect persons wandering the surface of the earth to instruct knowledge to people covered by ignorance are Sanat Kumar, Narad, Ribhu, Angira, Devala, Asita, Apantaratma, who is Vyasadeva, Markandeya, Gautama, Vashishta, Bhagavan Parshuram, Kapila, Shukadev, Durvasa, Yagyavalka, Jatukarna, and Aruni. Others are Romasha, Chavana, Dattatreya, Asuri, Patanjali, the great sage Domya, who is like the head of the Vedas, the sage Panchashika, Hiranyanabha, Kaushalya, Shrutadev, and Rita Dwaja. You must certainly be among them. Purport. The word the power went out. So let me just 1 second. Give me a second here, guys. Where is there? Oops. Okay. Now. One second. Let me just switch the camera around. Oops. Settings. Camera facing back. There. All right. Anyways, I'm just gonna, it seems like my internet's too slow. I'm just gonna read. Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm just gonna read, otherwise, because the front camera isn't working on this stupid phone. So the word Jnana Hetava is very significant. because great personalities like those listed in these verses wander on the surface of the globe, not to mislead the populace, but to distribute real knowledge. Without this knowledge, human life is wasted. The human form of life is meant for realization of one's relationship with Krishna, or God. One who lacks this knowledge is categorized among the animals. The Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita 7:15, Namam dushkritino muda prapadyante naradhama mayaya pahirita jnana asuram bhavamashrita. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Ignorance is the bodily conception of life. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridhatuke saeva gohara. Practically everyone throughout the universe, especially on this planet, Bhurloka, thinks that there is no separate existence of the body and soul, and therefore no need of self-realization. But that is not a fact. Therefore, all the Brahmins listed here, being devotees, travel all over the world to awaken Krishna consciousness in the hearts of such foolish materialists. The acharyas mentioned in these verses are described in the Mahabharata. The word Panchashika is also important. One who is liberated from the conceptions of Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya, and who is perfectly aware of the subtle coverings of the soul, is called Panchashika. According to the statements of the Mahabharata, Shanti Parva, chapters 218 to 219, Acharya named Panchashika took birth in the family of Maharaj Janak, the ruler of Mithila. Interesting. The Sankhya philosophers accept Panchashikacharya as one of them. Real knowledge pertains to the living entity dwelling within the body. Unfortunately, because of ignorance, the living entity identifies himself with the body and therefore feels pleasure and pain. Let me see if the internet's working on this phone. I'm just looking at the comments. Looks like it's working. Let's see if I can switch the camera now. Wasn't working before. I just want to try one last time. Okay, facing front, facing back. Yay! Now it gets stuck when I do this. All right, you'll just have to stare at my face. Tasmadhyubam grama pashor mamamura diya prabhu hande tamasi magnasya jnana deepa udiryatam. Because you are great personalities, you can give me real knowledge. I am as foolish as a village animal, like a pig or a dog, because I am merged in the darkness of ignorance. Therefore, please ignite the torch of knowledge to save me. Purport. This is the way to receive knowledge. One must submit oneself at the lotus feet of great personalities who can actually deliver transcendental knowledge. It is therefore said, Tasmar Gurum Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam. That's from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11:3-21. One who is inquisitive to understand the highest goal and benefit of life must approach a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him. Only one who is actually eager to receive knowledge to eradicate the darkness of ignorance is eligible to approach a guru or spiritual master. The guru should not be approached for material benefits. One should not approach a guru just to cure some disease or receive some miraculous benefit. This is not the way to approach the guru. Tadvijnanatam. One should approach the guru to understand the transcendental science of spiritual life. Unfortunately, in this age of Kali, there are many bogus gurus who display magic to their disciples, and many foolish disciples who want to see such magic for material benefits. These disciples are not interested in pursuing spiritual life to save themselves from the darkness of ignorance. It is said, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. This gives the definition of Guru. Everyone is in the darkness of ignorance. Therefore, everyone needs to be enlightened with transcendental knowledge. One who enlightens his disciple and saves him from rotting in the darkness of ignorance in this material world is a true Guru. Shri Angira Uvacha. Actually, it's just funny that we're reading this because just yesterday, Srila Prabhupada said, is a true Guru. And we just, last night, I published an article called, by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur on our Raise the Harmonious mailing list, which is, who is a true Guru? Shri Angira Uvacha Aham te putra kamasya putra dosmyam gira nripa esha brahma sutta shakshan narado bhagavan rishi. And Gira said, my dear king, when you desired to have a son, I approached you. Indeed, I am the same Angira Rishi who gave you this son. As for this Rishi, he is the great sage Narad, the direct son of Lord Brahma. One second. Itang tvam putra shokena magnam tamasi dushtare atararham anusmritya mahapurusha gocharam anugrahaya bhavata prapta bhavam iha prabhu pramanyo bhagavar bhakto navasadityamarhasi. My dear king, you are an advanced devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To be absorbed in lamentation for the loss of something material is unsuitable for a person like you. Therefore, we have both come to you to relieve you from this false lamentation, which is due to your being merged in the darkness of ignorance. For those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge to be affected by material loss and gain, for those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge, to be affected by material loss and gain is not at all desirable. Purport. Several words in this verse are very important. The word Mahapurusha refers to advanced devotees and also to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maha means the supreme, means person. One who always engages in the service of the Lord is called Mahapurushika. Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit are sometimes addressed as Mahapurushika. A devotee should always aspire to engage in the service of advanced devotees. As Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Tadara charana sevi bhakta sanivas janame hoy e abhilash. A devotee should always aspire to live in the association of advanced devotees and engage in the service of the Lord through the Parampara system. One should serve the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through the instructions of the great Goswamis of Vrindavan. This is called Tadar Charana Sevi. While serving the lotus feet of the Goswamis, one should live in the association of devotees. While serving the lotus feet of the Goswamis, one should live in the association of devotees, Bhakta Sanivas. This is the business of a devotee. A devotee should not aspire for material profit or lament for material loss. When Angira Rishi and Narad saw that Maharaj Citraketu, an advanced devotee, had fallen in the darkness of ignorance and was lamenting for the material body of his son, by their causeless mercy, they came to advise him so that he could be saved from this ignorance. Another significant word is Brahmanya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is sometimes addressed by the prayer Namo Brahmana Devaya, which offers obeisances unto the Lord because he is served by the devotees. Therefore, this verse states, Brahmanyo Bhagavad Bhakto Navasaditam Arhasi. This is a symptom of an advanced devotee. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. That's Bhagavad Gita 1854. For a devotee, an advanced self-realized soul, there is no cause for material jubilation or lamentation. He is always transcendental to conditional life. तथैव ते परं ज्ञानं ददामि गृहमागतः ज्ञात्वान्याभिनिवेशन्ते पुत्रम् एव ददाम्यहम्. When I first came to your home, I could have given you the supreme transcendental knowledge. But when I saw that your mind was absorbed in material things, I gave you only a son who caused you jubilation and lamentation. Adhuna putrinam tapo bhavataivanubhuyate evam dara griharayo vividaishvarya sampada. Shabdadayashcha vishayashcha laraja vibhutaya mahirajam balam kosha vrittamata suhrijana sarvapi shurase neme shokamoha bayartida Gandharva Nagara Prakya Swapnamaya Manorataha. My dear king, now you are actually experiencing the misery of a person who has sons and daughters. O king, owner of the state of Shuraseni, one's wife, his house, the opulence of his kingdom, and his various other opulences and objects of sense perception are all the same in that side. All these things are all the same in that they are temporary. One's kingdom, military power, treasury, servants, ministers, friends, and relatives are all causes of fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. They are like a Gandharva Nagar, a non-existent palace that one imagines to exist in the forest. Because they are impermanent, they are no better than illusions, dreams, and mental concoctions. Purport. One second. This verse describes the entanglement of material existence. In material existence, the living entity possesses many things: the material body, children, wife, and so on. Dehapatya kalatradishu. One may think that these will give him protection, but that is impossible. In spite of all these possessions, the spirit soul has to give up his present situation and accept another. The next situation may be unfavorable, but even if it is favorable, one must give it up and again accept another body. In this way, one's tribulation in material existence continues. A sane man should be perfectly aware that these things will never be able to give him happiness. One must be situated in a spiritual identity and eternally serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a devotee. Angira Rishi and Narad Muni gave this instruction to Maharaj Citraketu. Drishyamana vinarthena nadrishante manobhava karma virdhyayato nana karmani manaso bhavam. These visible objects, like wife, children, and property, are like dreams and mental concoctions. Actually, what we see has no permanent existence. It is sometimes seen and sometimes not. Only because of our past actions do we create such mental concoctions, and because of these concoctions, we perform further activities. Purport. Everything material is a mental concoction, because it is sometimes visible and sometimes not. At night, when we dream of tigers and snakes, they are not actually present, but we are afraid because we are affected by what we envision in our dreams. Everything material is like a dream because it actually has no permanent existence. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes as follows in his commentary: Artena vyagrasarpadlina vinaiva drishyamana swapnadi bange sati na drishyante tar evam daradayo vastava vastubhuta swapnadayo vastu bhutash chasarve manobhava manobhasana jantavyam manobhava. At night, one dreams of tigers and snakes, and while dreaming, he actually sees them. But as soon as the dream is broken, they no longer exist. Similarly, the material world is a creation of our mental concoctions. We have come to this material world to enjoy material resources, and by material concoction, we discover many, many objects of enjoyment because our minds are absorbed in material things. This is why we receive various bodies. According to our mental concoctions, we work in various ways, desiring various achievements. And by nature and the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Karmana Daiva Netrena, we get the advantages we desire. Thus we become more and more involved with material concoctions. This is the reason for our suffering in the material world. By one kind of activity, we create another, and they are all products of our material concoctions. Sorry, I meant to say mental concoctions. Ayam hi dehino deho dravagyana kriyatmaka dehino vivida klesha santapa krid udahrita. The living entity in the bodily conception of life is absorbed in the body, which is a combination of the physical elements. Sorry, let me reread that. The living entity in the bodily conception of life is absorbed in the body, which is a combination of the physical elements, the 5 senses for gathering knowledge, and the 5 senses of action, along with the mind. Through the body, the living entity suffers the 3 kinds of tribulations: adibhotika, adidivika, and adhyatmika. Therefore, this body is a source of all miseries. We sit up. In the 5th canto, 554, while instructing his sons, Rishabdev said, Asan api kleshada ashadeha. The body, although temporary, is the cause of all the miseries of material existence. As already discussed in the previous verse, the entire material creation is based on mental concoction. The mind sometimes induces us to think that if we purchase an automobile, we can enjoy the physical elements such as earth, water, air, and fire, combined in the forms of iron, plastic, petrol, and so on. Working with the 5 material elements, Panchabhutas, as well as with our 5 knowledge-gathering senses like the eyes, ears, and tongue, and our 5 active senses like the hands and legs, we become involved in the material condition. Thus we are subjected to the tribulations known as adhyatmika, adidivika, and adibhotika. The mind is a center because the mind creates all these things. As soon as the material object is struck, however, the mind is affected and we suffer. For example, with the material elements, the working senses and the knowledge-gathering senses we create. With the material elements, the working senses and the knowledge-gathering senses, we create a very nice car. And when the car is accidentally smashed in a collision, the mind suffers, and through the mind, the living entity suffers. The fact is that the living entity, while concocting with the mind, creates the material condition. Because matter is destructible through the material condition of the living entity, hey, there's a comma missing. Because matter is destructible through the material condition, the living entity suffers. Otherwise, the living entity is detached from all material conditions. When one comes to the Brahman platform, the platform of spiritual life, fully understanding that he is a spirit soul, he is no longer affected by lamentation or hankering. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:54, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, na sochati na kankshati. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 15:7, the Lord says, Mamai vangsho jiva loke bhuta sanatana manasangstanindriyani prakritir stani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragments. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. The living entity is actually part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is unaffected by material conditions. But because the mind, the mana, is affected, the senses are also affected, and the living entity struggles for existence within this material world.
It's 8 o'clock.
It is 8 o'clock. Okay, time is up. Let's see. I'm just looking at How much is left over? I just want to see. If we can finish in 5 minutes, then maybe we should just finish. All right, 26, 27, 28. Oh, we're at the very end. Let's just finish. This will take less than 5 minutes. Tasmasvastena manasa vimrisha gatamatmana dvaite dhruvarta vishrambham tyaja pashamam avisha. Therefore, O King Citraketu, carefully consider the position of the Atma. In other words, try to understand who you are, whether body, mind, or soul. Consider where you have come from, where you are going after giving up this body, and why you are under the control of material lamentation. Try to understand your real position in this way, and then you will be able to give up your unnecessary attachment. You will also be able to give up the belief that this material world or anything not directly in touch with the service to Krishna is eternal. Or anything not directly in touch with the service to Krishna is eternal. Thus you will obtain peace. Wait, that didn't make sense to me. You'll be able to give up the belief. Oh, sorry, that part. You'll be able to give up the belief that this material world or anything not directly in touch with the service to Krishna is eternal. You'll give up that idea. Thus you will obtain peace. Purport. The Krishna consciousness movement is factually endeavoring to bring human society to a sober condition. Because of a misdirected civilization, people are jumping into materialistic life like cats and dogs, performing all sorts of abominable, sinful actions, and are becoming increasingly entangled. The Krishna consciousness movement includes self-realization. The Krishna consciousness movement includes self-realization because one is first directed by Lord Krishna to understand that one is not the body, but the owner of the body. When one understands this simple fact, he can direct himself toward the goal of life. Because people are not educated in terms of the goal of life, they are working like madmen and becoming more and more attached to the material atmosphere. The misguided man accepts the material condition as everlasting. One must give up his faith in material things and give up attachment for them. Then one will be sober and peaceful. Okay, last 2 verses, and there's no purport in either of these verses. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam etang mantro panidashadam praticha prayato mama yam dharayan saptaratrad drashta sankarshanam vibhum. The great sage Narad continued, "My dear king, attentively receive from me a mantra which is most auspicious. After accepting it from me, in 7 nights you will be able to see the Lord face to face. Yat paramulam upasrita narendra purve sarvadayo brahmamimam tvitiyam visrija sadyastadiyam atulanadikam mahitvam prapurbavam apiparam nachirad upaiti." My dear king, in former days, Lord Shiva and other demigods took shelter of the lotus feet of Sankarshan. Thus, they immediately got freed from the illusion of duality and achieved unequaled and unsurpassed glories in spiritual life. You will very soon attain that very same position. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 15th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled "The Saints Narad and Gira instruct King Citraketu." I almost said King Citraketu. All right. So tomorrow we will read the beginning of chapter 16. King Citraketu meets the Supreme Lord. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. जय श्री श्री गुरु गौरांग गंधाविक गिरिधारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मत् शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत साई शिल भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मत् शिल भक्ति विज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मत् शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट महाभागवत शिल गोक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम नितिल प्रविष्ट शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिल जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरिया गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर प्रसाद वृंद की जय। नाम हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मत् भक्ति श्री रूप सिद्धांति गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। तदीय शुभ तिरुभाव तिथि की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवाश्च कृष्ण भक्ति पद देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वंशा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। धन्यवाद प्रणाम हरि बोल।